Space is a wondrous place full of excitement and adventure, filled with countless possibilities. What lurks beyond the stars is a question humanity has posed time and time again, and with each passing day we are closer to uncovering its myriad of secrets. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 amazing space-based discoveries. Giant black hole inside a tiny satellite galaxy of our Milky Way defies explanation. The Milky Way is our home, our little patch of space in which our solar system dwells. However, it is far from being the only galaxy near us. Seated at an estimated 820,000 light-years away from our very own green planet lies a tiny galaxy on the outskirts of the Milky Way. This galaxy, named Leo 1, is a dwarf galaxy only spans the length of 2,000 light-years across, which compared to most galaxies we know of is surprisingly small. For example, our galaxy is about 100,000 light-years in length. Furthermore, until recently it was widely speculated that the Leo 1 galaxy posed a mass of only 15 to 30 million times that of our Sun, which, in comparison to the Milky Way's 1.5 trillion suns in mass, is minuscule. Nevertheless, for a galaxy of its size, it holds a treasure or a curse, as in its center is a ravenous black hole. Maria Jose Bustamante, who is a graduate astronomer for the University of Texas, has claimed there is no explanation for this kind of black hole in dwarf spheroidal galaxies. As with the majority of such discoveries, it was a total chance finding. More often than not, scientific discoveries are made when no one is expecting or looking for them. Initially, the group of scientists were trying to research how much dark matter might reside in LEO 1 by using the Virus W observatory instrument at the McDonald Observatory belonging to the University of Texas with the Harlan telescope, which is 2.7 meters wide. The Virus W is specifically made to measure the motions of galaxies, constellations, and stars, particularly around the area of the Milky Way. By doing so and tracking these motions, telescope is then able to estimate the amount of dark matter residing in that space. Of course, dark matter is not visible. It is an entirely invisible substance, and as such, the only reliable way of measuring its concentration in the universe is by going off the orbits of nearby stars. If a star is surrounded by a higher concentrate of dark matter, it will travel far faster across the night sky than if there is less dark matter. When the team of researchers used the telescope on LEO 1, what they uncovered baffled their minds. The galaxy lacked almost any dark matter, and yet, despite this, there was a black hole residing in its middle. Their computer models revealed that this black hole, all by itself, is worth at least the mass of 3 million suns. Our very own Sagittarius A star, which is the Milky Way's black hole, is only larger than this by a quarter. Carl Gebhardt, who is the University of Texas astrophysicist, has stated, "You have a very small galaxy that is falling into the Milky Way, and its black hole is about as massive as the Milky Way's. The mass ratio is absolutely huge. Scientists say Andromeda has swallowed other galaxies and ours is next. The Milky Way's sibling galaxy, Andromeda, has devoured countless smaller galaxies in its 10 billion-year lifetime. It should be no surprise that as the closest galaxy to it, we are destined to become Andromeda's next meal. The galaxy is set to collide with our Milky Way in a mere 4 billion years. Granted, none of us will be alive to witness the event, cosmically speaking, for billion years is but a handful of time. Who knows what will become of the Earth by then, or of us? Perhaps our descendants will be alive to witness the cataclysm, or perhaps humanity will fall long before then. Regardless, Andromeda will swallow us. Researchers have dedicated themselves to studying Andromeda's previous cosmic meals via analyzing the cloud of gas that surrounds the galaxy. This research showed that Andromeda has undergone 2 prior large feeding events. The first occurred in the ancient period of our cosmos, whereas the second happened within at least a few billion years of our existence. Scientists used the Pan-Andromeda Archaeological Survey with a telescope atop of the Mauna Kea in Hawaii owned by Canada, France, and Hawaii. The PA&AS is designed to recreate Andromeda's structure as it was billions of years ago, in its components and evolution. This field of the industry is often referred to as galactic archaeology. The research is run by Dougal McKee, who states the globular clusters that we measured were probably not formed when smaller galaxies were shredded by Andromeda. The most likely scenario based on the properties of the clusters is that they were formed in the smaller galaxies. And when those galaxies were later destroyed by Andromeda, the clusters were deposited into Andromeda's halo. The aforementioned clusters seem to have been from the GC hub group, or the feeding that occurred recently, speaking of course in cosmic terms. Comparatively, the scientists deemed the clusters formed from the ancient feeding the GC non-group. The separate groups rotate at different angles around Andromeda. It is uncertain whether Andromeda devoured several tiny galaxies or two or more large ones. Mackie stated that his team's observations are broadly consistent and assures everyone that they constantly check their data to ensure their research is accurate. In the future, the team is hoping to use the Hubble Space Telescope to further their research and to find out more about the elusive Andromeda. Regarding Andromeda's past galactic binges, Mackie claims, "We can no longer see the streams left over from the destruction of whatever system or systems were destroyed. The stars are there, but their spatial positions have long since spread out to form a relatively smooth overall distribution. The Milky Way and Andromeda have roughly the same mass. This means that the future collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda won't proceed in the same way as for the smaller galaxies Andromeda has eaten in the past." Mackie states that, at least in theory, the collision will be destructive, immense, and bright. He believes that the collision will cause both galaxies to fracture their spiral disks and that they will merge into something more elliptical in form. Fortunately for future descendants, should humanity still exist, Earth should be preserved from any harm and will bring several centuries' worth of glorious skies. Space station tosses 2.9-ton hunk of space junk overboard. A space station disposed of a 2.9-ton hunk of pure junk into space. The space junk in question was a huge pallet of used-up batteries. Officials involved with the happening assure the public and scientists concerned with space pollution that the pallet would return to Earth within under a decade, for years at most. The same officials also claim that the batteries and pallet will burn up harmlessly in the atmosphere, though there are researchers and scientists who oppose the statement with vehement distaste. Phil Plait, an American astronomer, claims that the pallet of batteries weighing a powerful 2.9 tons is unlikely to just burn up on its way back to Earth. Even under the pressure and heat, Plait believes it is too much mass to safely dissipate without harm. Arguably, Tiangong-1, which was another piece of space junk, weighed 8.3 tons and caused no issue, but it is the density of the battery pallet, called Exposed Pallet 9, that is a major concern to people. Alongside Phil Plait, Jonathan McDowell, an astronomer at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Massachusetts, shares the same doubts. Tiangong-1 was the very first prototype space station belonging to China's space program. The station was first used from 2012 to 2013 and ended up returning to Earth in April of 2018, colliding with the Pacific Ocean. In the past, used-up batteries would be packed in disposable HDVs and taken back to the Earth's orbit into the atmosphere to be destroyed on the way down. However, because of the October 2018 failure of NASA's Soyuz rocket launch with the astronauts Alexei Ovchinin and Nick Hague, the pattern of sending battery-filled HTVs was put off guard, and though both astronauts landed safely when the Soyuz rocket failed to launch because of the launcher board system, the EP-9 went into space without its HTV, meaning it was left without any other option but to be ejected into space. The European Space Agency claims that there are about 34,000 pieces of space debris that are at least 4 inches in width and over 128 million space junk debris of 1 millimeter in size. Space is many things. It is our home. It is a mystery and an enigma we hope to someday solve. Time will only tell what will come of humanity and Earth billions of years from now. But one thing is certain, we shall eternally have a thirst for knowledge, but for as long as we exist and now that Earth is vastly explored, where else is there to go but up? And what do you make of these discoveries? Mystery surrounds us wherever we go. It seems that each time we learn more about reality and the universe, there are only more secrets and questions that emerge. Like some sort of hydra of knowledge, after we learn and begin to solve one mystery, more simply take its place, and there is no place that mystifies us more than space. So today, we will be going through 3 interesting space mysteries that have hit our radar, have us scratching our heads. The white dwarf with an off switch. Space researchers have witnessed a white dwarf star suddenly switching on and off for the first time. Like some sort of galactic light switch, the little star was seen losing and gaining its brightness over a relatively short amount of time. The astronomers at Durham University in the UK were using a NASA satellite, specifically the Transiting Exoplanet Survey. For the uninitiated, a white dwarf star is a planet-sized star that is incredibly dense. White dwarfs form when a larger star has burnt through its inner resource of nuclear fuel. White dwarfs are typically the size of our Sun, and their volume is similar to that of Earth. This specific flickering white dwarf was feeding from another star that was orbiting nearby, the scientists explained. The observed white dwarf was recorded as dimming in brightness within the span of half an hour. This surprised the researchers, as white dwarfs in this feeding period usually lose their brightness over much longer periods of time, from weeks to even months. So seeing change on such a short time span, especially when it comes to space, is very interesting indeed. So what is the reason behind this interstellar on and off switch? The researchers behind the discovery noted that the level of light emitted from a white dwarf depends on how much available food the star has surrounding it. It is because of this that the researchers believe that something must be interrupting the star's supply of food, momentarily cutting it off before allowing access again. The star in question is housed in a system called TW Pictoris, which is around 1,400 light-years away from Earth. Researchers hope that this discovery could lead to greater understanding around the physics of accretion, which is the scientific name behind the previously mentioned feeding. Soon, scientists may know more about how objects like stars and black holes feed on nearby materials. So many black holes. We are quite used to seeing amazing images taken of the night sky. Whether from typical cameras or special astronomical equipment, we are all familiar with huge black panoramas decorated in thousands, if not millions, of little white dots. From movies to textbooks, and even simply staring up to the night sky, it is a scene that we have all seen countless times. But scientists at the University of Hamburg have created such an image with a bit of a different background. The image, which shows a wedge of space covered in thousands of wide spots, is actually a photograph of thousands of supermassive black holes. That's right, every last one of those stars is actually a supermassive black hole sitting at the heart of a galaxy. Totaling years of accumulating work, the researchers have succeeded in making the most detailed map of black holes at low radio frequencies to date. The team used innovative techniques to create the image, specifically a method of converting radio signals into images of the sky. The difficulty in photographing black holes lies in, well, their color. The black holes themselves are void of anything perceptible, and scientists rely on the after effects of the black hole's behavior to detect them. When a black hole is feeding, then the accreting material spalling off from nearby planets, stars, and other objects is a telltale sign. The team used an impressive tech setup to take the photo, specifically the low-frequency array in Europe. Built across the whole span of Europe, the network of tech is made up of 20,000 individual radio antennas over 52 locations. Can offer the same sort of imaging of the sky. The now famous photo was taken using frequencies below 100 MHz and is only 4% of the northern sky. Ultimately, the plan is to map the entirety of the northern sky through the LOFR LBA Sky Survey. As the methods and network improve based upon this first stage of development, researchers hope that they will gain new data on celestial objects, 50 MHz, mysterious hut on the moon. Perhaps a sign of a pizza PR campaign gone rogue, or perhaps a sign of intelligent life. The astronomical world was sent into a bit of a frenzy when China's Farside lunar rover, U-22, photographed what appeared to be a small structure on the moon. The moon is no stranger to strange photography. Back in 2013, an image of a face was taken on the moon's south pole. Looking more similar to a few bumps in the moon's surface than a face, the image was actually picked up during the International Space App Challenge 2013 Tokyo, where tech using facial recognition noticed some human-esque features in the lunar crevices. And while the face on the moon probably did not impress even the most eager of alien believers, the moon hut definitely piqued the interest of a lot of people. Research professor in the Department of Geography and Institute for Earth and Space Exploration at the University of Western Ontario had something to say. It's just a rock on a crater rim north of the rover's last night parking location. Other images taken by U22 showed a more detailed look at the hut-shaped object on the moon's far side. Stuke continued to add, Chinese media are very eager to find all sorts of strange things on the moon. We tend to think they are all tightly controlled and just repeat the party line. But there is a ton of stuff spinning every news item into a sensational headline. Alien bases, millions of tons of priceless metals or unspecific substances, conspiracies about Western interests in space and everything else. Just like Western media tabloids, there are many publications and outlets that are willing to run with a story no matter how outlandish it might seem. The media in China is no different. I am not surprised that a rock which, in low-resolution images, looks roughly square and is played up as a hut or other type of building. Specifically, the rock could be interesting, and I expect it or nearby rocks on the crater rim to be studied in detail when they reach it in early 2022. But it won't look like a hut, Stuck said. Unfortunately, it seems that this might be a case of history repeating itself. Many recognize the story of the face on Mars, which years later was just shown to be a mixture of low-resolution photography and shadows caused by Martian mountain ridges. It seems that once we have closer photos of the so-called hut, it is likely to be the rim of a crater or other naturally occurring lunar geography. Still, for those who are eager to find evidence of aliens, this little lunar hut might be a talking point for some time. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? There is a whole universe to explore, and us humans are always learning more and more about it. Fascinating new discoveries are not rare, but chances are you have not heard of them all. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries. Radioactive tomb in the Pacific filled with nuclear waste is starting to crack. The Marshall Islands are home to the largest amount of nuclear toxic waste ever forced upon another country by the United States. These islands, 5,000 miles west of Los Angeles, were viewed as isolated, unimportant, and perfect for a radioactive testing program run by the U.S. The United States set off a total of 67 radioactive tests over the islands. This caused, of course, significant damage to the local area and forced hundreds to relocate. Later, the United States organized a cleanup of contaminated soil on Enuitak Atoll. It was at Atoll where the majority of weapons tests occurred. Between 1977 and 1980, about 4,000 U.S. servicemen deposited 35 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of toxic waste into a crater called the Runic Dome, or, as the locals call it, the tomb. Only 3 of Enuitak Atoll's 40 islands are currently habitable, and the island hosting the tomb is not one. Today, 650 people live in the atoll, but that may soon change. The Runic Dome was sealed on top. It was never lined on the bottom. Rising tides threatened to crack open the tomb, providing an escape for the 3.1 million cubic feet of radioactive waste residing inside. While the U.S. Department of Energy has cleared residents to move back into other parts of Enuitak, locals are suspicious of the message. After all, the cracking tomb contains an abundance of dangerous carcinogen. Climate change is likely responsible for the rising seas. The water in the area has climbed 7 millimeters every year since 1993. Storm surges and flooding are now more common, the force of which threatens to crack open the tomb. It certainly sounds like bad news, but not all scientists are worried. Toxins already exist in all that we eat and drink, so residents may not face dangers unless they inhale the waste. Still, scientists are working to truly understand the effects of these toxins on the islands. U.S. officials have so far declined to provide additional assistance to the Marshall Islands, stating the Marshallese government now has the authority over the dome. Yet, recent studies show that toxin levels in certain spots of the Enuitak Atoll rivals those of Chernobyl. Additionally, It has been found that the United States government withheld crucial information about the dome prior to the signing of a compact in 1986 that released the United States government of further liability. These discoveries may help Marshallese officials challenge the compact, which is set to be renegotiated in 2023. It may also help pressure the U.S. to honor the orders of an international tribunal. So far, the U.S. has paid $4 million of the $2.3 billion in property and health claims established by the tribunal. It seems likely that damage to the tomb will progress, and if so, any adverse effects will ultimately be revealed. At that time, it will become clear if the United States is truly willing to intervene any more than it already has. Until then, residents of the Marshall Islands must keep playing a frightening waiting game. Scientists confused as firework galaxy is exploding. Scientists witnessed an explosion in the fireworks galaxy, or NGC 6946, for the first time in 1917. But since then, astronomers have observed almost a dozen stellar explosions in the galaxy, which is 25.2 million light-years away from Earth. Until recently, it seemed these explosions were typical supernovas, which are stellar explosions that cause stars to lose most of their mass and lead to a sudden increase in brightness. In 2019, however, scientists detected a suspicious energetic blast in the galaxy thanks to an X-ray from NASA's Nuclear Spectroscopic Telescope array that showed a peculiar blotch of green light. This indicated a blast far more energetic than what is expected from a supernova. The blast also appeared in the fireworks galaxy for only 10 days, while supernovas can take hundreds of days to fade. Scientists are still unsure what prompted this mysterious blast, but they suspect the answer involves the impacts of a black hole or neutron star on a neighboring stellar object. Despite their name, black holes have a glow along their outer edges due to intense radiation in the event that a nearby object is drawn into the black hole's orbit. Therefore, the green burst of light shown on the X-ray may come from a black hole that pulled in a nearby star. The gravitational force of the black hole would shred the star, causing debris to orbit near the black hole. This rotating debris would likely spin fast enough to generate intense heat, making the debris hundreds of times hotter than our sun. This would cause the flash of radiation shown on the X-ray before the debris was fully sucked into the black hole. Neutron stars are created when a supergiant star runs out of fuel, causing the core to collapse and crushing all protons and electrons into neutrons. This makes neutron stars one of the smallest and densest celestial objects. The gravitational pull of a neutron star is billions of times stronger than the Earth's. Typically, neutron stars spin so fast that from ever reaching the surface. However, it is possible that a wobble in the star's magnetic field can slow down the rotation, allowing debris to be pulled in and possibly creating the sudden blast shown in the X-ray. If a neutron star is the true explanation for the radiation flash, there will likely be another wobble in the future that causes a similar blast. Scientists are on the lookout for related occurrences and hope to learn just how explosive the fireworks galaxy truly is. The Bort's Void, while it is exciting to imagine the universe as a vast, bright expanse lit by stars and other celestial objects, that is not always the case. 700 million light-years away from Earth is a large, spherical region of space with very few galaxies. This is the Bort's Void, and it is exciting in a much darker way. The sphere, which is about 330 million light-years wide, is large enough to hold billions of Milky Ways, yet there is hardly any galaxies to be seen. It was discovered in 1981 when Robert Kirchner and other astronomers were working to create a 3D map of the universe. Originally, the region was called the Great Nothing, but it was ultimately given the name the Bort's Void because it appears to lie in the Bort's constellation. The Bort's Void is not the only void in the universe. Galaxies exist in a web-like arrangement inside large thread-like structures called filaments. Voids exist in between these filaments, and they make up about 80% of the observable universe. Typically, voids measure between 30 to 300 million light-years across. Bort's, however, is one of the largest, and it has even earned the title of supervoid. In the Bort's Void, based on the average distance between galaxies, The void should contain around 10,000 galaxies. According to astronomer Greg Oldering, if the Milky Way had been in the center of the Bort's void, he wouldn't have known there was other galaxies until the 60s. Astronomers believe that voids are created due to random quantum fluctuations that occurred in the early days of the universe and led to small differences in the distribution of matter. In more dense areas, the gravitational pull was stronger, which forced matter away from less dense areas. This created a cycle that led to the areas becoming more and more dense, and eventually clumps of matter became galaxies. At the same time, voids were created as matter was pulled away from low-density areas. This process theoretically explains most of the voids, but it does not quite explain the size of supervoids like Vortices. Scientists are not convinced that gravitational forces alone could practically empty a space of that size. A new theory suggests that it is possible the supervoid is made of multiple smaller voids that have merged together. Astronomer Greg Oldering observed tube-shaped galaxies inside the supervoid. He interpreted the tubes as representing previous boundaries between smaller voids. Although plausible explanations for the Bort's void exist, the supervoid has still challenged standard ideas of galaxy formation. Luckily, Borts and other voids may help astronomers learn more about the origins of the universe. And, since the Bort's void is nearly a vacuum, it may one day present an opportunity for superspeed space travel. Perhaps the most important implication of the Bort's discovery is that it may prompt scientists to revise the Big Bang theory, as no one is quite sure how the existence of supervoids fits into our current ideas of gravity and quantum mechanics. What do you make of these new discoveries? Astronomers have been left confused after detecting a mysterious celestial object, detailing that it's currently releasing massive bursts of energy every 18 minutes. Those who are currently studying the cosmic object have described it as a lighthouse, saying that the object is sending out these messages 3 times an hour. Astronomers have said they've had no trouble detecting these signals and that due to their intensity, they're one of the brightest points in space right now. Interestingly, when questioned about what the object is, the team have said that as of right now they're not sure, and that it could turn out to be an entirely new object. The team is being led by astrophysicist Natasha Hurley-Walker from the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research. Other researchers have been involved in the study of Turan Otaegidi from Curtin University, who actually discovered this object by using the Murchison Wide Field Array Telescope, which can be found in Western Australia. The Murchison Wide Field Array Telescope detailed the following on their website. The Murchison Wide Field Array is a low-frequency radio telescope in Western Australia. The front end of the Murchison Wide Field Array consists of 4,096 spider-like antennas, arranged in 256 regular grid-score tiles, spread over several kilometers within the Murchison Radio Astronomy Observatory. Data from the antennas is correlated on site before being transmitted to the Pauzee Superconducting Center for long-time storage. The back end of the telescope is an online platform, the Murchison Wide Field Array node of All the Sky Virtual Observatory, through which scientists access collaborated MWA data. Astrophysicist Natasha Hurley-Walker said the following about the discovery. This object was appearing and then disappearing over a few hours during our observations. That was completely unexpected. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that. And it's really quite close to us. Around 4,000 light-years away is seen our galactic backyard. Natasha did say, though, in an interview that it's not anything biological sending out these signals, saying that whatever's sending out these signals is using a massive amount of energy. They know this because the signals that are being sent out are being detected all across the frequency spectrum. Oddly enough, though, the researchers did say that it's strange how this one is acting, and said that they don't usually stick to such a specific time such as this one. For example, the team have detected slow magnetic outbursts before, where these have been observed flickering on and off for several days, but notes that they haven't detected anything like this before in terms of how it's acting. With that being said, the team are fairly certain about what they've detected. Further investigations revealed that this object had a very strong magnetic field. The study was published in the journal Nature. The researchers said the following: "We think it's a magnetar. It's a type of slowly spinning neutron star that has been predicted to exist theoretically. But nobody expected to directly detect one like this, because we didn't expect them to be so bright. Somehow it's converting magnetic energy to radio waves, much more effectively than anything else we've seen before. More detections will tell astronomers whether this was a rare one-off event or a vast new population that we've never seen before." Magnetars are considered the most powerful magnets in our universe, and have been known to erupt into giant flares and produce X-rays and gamma rays, implying they could also create fast radio bursts. Throughout the years, scientists have been able to identify nearly 150 various flashes within our universe. Within the past 2 years, though, that number has almost quadrupled. And this is because of the success of a large stationary radio telescope set up in British Columbia. The CHIME telescope, the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, was first set up in 2018 to observe and catalog potential FRBs. In just its first year, CHIME detected 535 new fast radio bursts and provided detail into the insight into their properties, which researchers are using to pinpoint their origins. In late April 2020, the CHIME telescope and a survey for transient astronomical radio emissions 2 or STARE-2 antennas in California and Utah detected a new fast radio burst. This burst, named FRB 200428, is the brightest burst that researchers have ever seen in our own galaxy. They explained that it was about 3,000 times more brilliant than any other signal they've cataloged, and that if you possess the recording of raw data from your phone's 4G LTE receiver, you could potentially have seen a radio signal on your phone. FRB 200428 was also the first burst to be traced to a magnetar, thus confirming the researchers' leading theory. It was also accompanied by X-rays a day earlier. Multiple space telescopes around the world detected these X-ray bursts, all originating from the exact location, and at the same time this fast radio burst occurred in Vulpeculae, a constellation set in our galaxy center around 30,000 light-years from Earth. Although this observation strengthens the magnetar theory, along with the X-ray emissions, scientists are still unaware of how exactly these bursts formed, or how they behave. Researchers are now intrigued with the possibility of directional bursts pointed away from the Earth, which would be undetectable to us and our telescopes. They will continue to monitor the sky and hopefully find further information to solve this mystery. So what you make this interesting discovery? Is there any place more vast with the opportunity of discovery than space? The infinite vacuum above our heads could have an equally infinite number of things to discover and learn. From the ways that black holes change our perception of the universe to the possibility of life, there is still so much we do not understand. As we chip away at the seemingly giant mountain of questions before us, we are learning more about the universe. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 new discoveries that scientists across the globe have recently made. Mysterious cosmic object swallowed by black hole. Black holes are confusing enough at the best of times. To see existence as we know it break down as matter interacts with the event horizon is a scary thing. But we are still continuing to find out more baffling things about black holes that can send shivers down even the most hardened scientist's spine. One of the more recent and perplexing pieces of info about these giant celestial holes comes from 2020, when a blip flashed on the equipment of the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. What the LIGO had detected had happened roughly 800 million light-years away from Earth. It was a black hole. Of course, this is nothing particularly spectacular, but what intrigued researchers was described by National Geographic as a wrinkle in spacetime. The black hole had swallowed something. The researchers unsure of what and the resulting convergence of energy sent wrinkles across spacetime. These wrinkles were actually gravitational waves which spanned across the universe and eventually hit Earth on the 14th of August, 2019. It was on that day in August that LIGO's sensitive detectors were able to record the event. It stands out among many thousands of other recorded events in space, and it has left scientists the black hole ate up. The collision, now named GW190814, involved 2 objects, a black hole with the same mass 23 times that of our Sun and a mystery object which was around 2.6 times the mass of our Sun. "We haven't seen with confidence anything like this before," said Vicky Caligara of Northwestern University in regards to GW 190814. So what do we know about the object? Well, scientists state that it exists somewhere between a traditional celestial body with a surface like a star and a matter-sucking black hole. The mass of the mystery object, as stated by National Geographic, places it between the heaviest known neutron stars and the lightest black holes. Researchers are currently attempting to understand where exactly neutron stars end and black holes begin, where our mystery object belongs. Understanding this extreme behavior in the universe can unravel an immense amount of knowledge. What's more is that as the universe ages, there may be nothing in existence other than these kinds of end-stage objects as most stars burn out. If it's a neutron star, it's an exciting mass for a neutron star. If it's a black hole, it's an exciting mass for a black hole, Caligari says. Either way, it perked up our antennas the moment we saw it. These two galaxies will crash into each other. Celestial collisions probably conjure up images of asteroids headed straight towards Earth, but these are some of the smallest things in space that can collide, especially when you consider that entire galaxies can collide with one another. Images of two faraway galaxies seemingly floating at a respectful distance might appear peaceful to us. And what we are seeing is actually the slow but eventual collision of two giant galaxies. Galaxies are groupings of stars, gases, dust, and other celestial bodies pulled together by gravitational pull. It is believed that the supermassive black holes that are suspected to be at the heart of every galaxy plays a big role in their formation. These two particular galaxies, however, are entangled, so much so that there is a visible as the gravitational effects of the galaxies begin to interrupt one another. The galaxies start to blend, essentially colliding. In a statement about the galaxy collision, the European Space Agency said the following: "Interaction with others is a common event in the history of most galaxies. For larger galaxies, like the Milky Way, the majority of these interactions involve significantly smaller so-called dwarf galaxies. But every few billion years, a more momentous event can occur. Even our very own galaxy, the Milky Way, is predicted to collide with our closest neighbor, Andromeda. Of course, this collision takes place over trillions of light-years of distance, meaning that the chance of objects hitting each other will be minimal. Still, the two galaxies will eventually merge into what some have dubbed they will be treated to a kaleidoscope of stars in the night sky as the very constellations above Earth change forever. Jupiter's mysterious energy crisis. We are not the only planet in the solar system that has its share of energy crises, but a recent report shows that we might have discovered the reason for Jupiter's strange source of energy. For the last half a century, our gas giant neighbor Jupiter has an odd quirk about its temperature. However, new research may have an answer. To those not in the know, Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. Although it is much further away, more than 5 astronomical units from the Sun than most of the planets, it is surprisingly warm. Because of this great distance, scientists would expect that the lack of sunlight would result in a very cold and frozen environment, somewhere around -100 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, Jupiter's average temperature in its upper atmosphere is a boiling 800 degrees Fahrenheit. That nearly rivals Venus' roasting surface temperature. This odd energy quirk might have an answer, however. Scientists now believe that this so-called energy crisis is the result of intense auroras. These auroras are born from Jupiter's strong magnetic field, and they are ultimately affecting the planet's temperature. NASA's Juno spacecraft was partly responsible for this latest conclusion about Jupiter. Juno is currently orbiting Jupiter and is passing through the planet's radiation field in order to study it in the greatest detail in astronomical history. We have auroras on Earth as well, but they are not uncommon in the solar system. Any planet with a significant magnetic field shows aurora behavior. For example, Mars and Venus have their own versions of auroras, not just Jupiter and Earth. Auroras are created when particles with electrical charges become unable to leave the magnetic field of the planet. From there, they travel towards the planet's poles, hitting atoms and molecules within the atmosphere, which creates the famous light show as seen in the Northern Lights. The researchers who have come to this conclusion seem to have gotten lucky when it comes to understanding the biggest planet in our system. James O'Donoghue, who is a planetary space scientist at JAXA's Institute of Space and Astronautical Science, said, "It was pure luck that we captured this potential heat-shedding event. If we'd observed Jupiter on a different night when the solar wind pressure had not recently been high, we would have missed it." Unfortunately, like many discoveries, the scientists now have even more questions about the heating on Jupiter. Dr. Tom Stallard, a co-author of the paper, said, "We also revealed a strange, localized region of heating well away from the aurora, a long bar of heating unlike anything we've seen before. Though we can't be sure what this feature is, I am convinced it's a rolling wave of heat flowing equator wood from the aurora." What do you make of these space discoveries? A few months back, several news outlets reported that something was happening to birds in various different countries, noting that they couldn't explain why so many of them were dropping out of the sky. This led people to come forward on social media and detail their personal stories. Oddly enough, it's not just one species that's being affected. Researchers who have been studying these birds and who have tried to get to the bottom of what's going on have explained that thousands of birds in the eastern United States are falling out of the sky, with some of these events even being captured by onlookers. It's led some of the researchers to suggest that something big is happening right now. But after collecting the data and expecting these birds to close up, scientists have said they're no closer to understanding why this is happening, and said they're worried because it's happening in various places across the world, including England, Wales, Ireland, Australia, Turkey, Egypt, and various other countries. As of right now, the scientists who are looking into this have ruled out some of the most common culprits, but said they can't seem to get to the bottom of what's causing these birds to fall from the sky. The mysterious event was first recorded in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Maryland of May last year. But researchers have said that within the last few months, reports are spreading all throughout the country. Wildlife rescue organizations have said they're having reports come in from all across the U.S., and that, as of right now, they're at an end. Noting that although scientists are working hard to get to the bottom of this, they haven't found anything concrete yet. One person said the following on social media: "There's still many parts of the United States that this is happening, but no one's reporting on it. I live in the eastern United States, and so far I've lost over 200 birds. I've called in the right people and tried to get them antibiotics when they appear to be down. But this has made no difference, and even the vets said they couldn't explain what was causing them to pass away." End quote. Just before Christmas 2021, officials in Spain reported that hundreds of birds were observed falling from the sky, calling it a bizarre phenomenon, and saying that they were working with officials in order to investigate why this happened. Locals in Ferrol, northwestern Spain, said that one by one they could be seen falling out of the sky, with local media describing the event in detail and saying that people were running for their cars as the birds were falling from the sky and hitting people. The event happened at 9 a.m., and although police said that no one was injured during the event, they said that it was worrying. Mappy Rodriguez, the president of the local resident association, said the following: "They came out of the trees in the emergency area of the hospital, flew a few meters and plummeted into the pavement. The birds had been collected and were now waiting to find out what happened. We are told it won't be easy." End quote. Scientists in the area, though, have said that there's nothing nearby that would affect these burns, saying that the only thing close to the area is that of a hospital and some shops. Chelsea Jones, a spokesperson for the Animal Welfare League in Arlington, Virginia, said the following: "In May we started to realize that something unusual was going on. We have received 300 birds so far, but that's just counting the deceased birds. The real total is much higher." End quote. Several of the birds from her organization have been sent to the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources in order to carry out further investigations. It's now been reported that they're working with the U.S. Geological Survey, with them saying that they have top researchers who are looking into what's caused these birds to fall from the sky. However, as of right now, no one knows what's caused this. They said the following: "To date, all of the findings have either been inconsistent or inconclusive." End quote. It does seem, though, as if these cases have increased in the past year. First reports have emerged from countries such as England, Wales, the Netherlands, and now Italy. And these are only the ones we know about. Many eyewitnesses have said that they've seen something similar, but that the majority of the time it doesn't get reported by the news. As of right now, it's clear that something is affecting these birds, with some pointing out that these cases could be linked to each other. Perhaps our planet is changing, or perhaps it's us that's causing these events. Back in the middle of September, reports were made that another mass die-off was happening in the southwestern air of the United States, and that it has some scientists worried and confused as to why this is. Researchers said that the birds were not acting themselves, for example, not flying away when cars were driving towards them, and just in general being down, something that's not really seen in this area. It wasn't long before eyewitnesses came forward and said that the wildlife wasn't acting normal, and some birds were just falling from the sky. When local researchers saw the numbers, they only then had an idea of how bad it was getting, saying that already hundreds of thousands of birds are showing this strange behavior and that the number could go into the millions. Residents in Wales have detailed seeing birds acting strange, noting that native species seem to be on the decrease, with one person saying the following. In Ainsley, this was being reported a while back, and this happened a few weeks after that initial event, but no one reported on it. I discovered a few of these birds in my garden. What's strange, though, was that during the night, I could hear loud noises. They sounded like loud booms, and I did say to my partner that this will most likely disturb the local wildlife. However, the next morning there were 7 of these birds in my garden. I talked to my neighbors about the booms, but they said they didn't hear them, and my partner said the booms may have been the military. I'm not saying the two events are linked, but I found it strange how these loud booms happened. Then I found these birds in my garden the following morning." End quote. So what do you make of these mysterious events? National parks are home to incredible views. These areas are important as they help to preserve and protect wildlife, along with rocks, plants, and trees. They are a haven for wildlife and are enjoyed by millions of people every year. Hikers appreciate national parks as they are free from development and have been largely unaltered, allowing visitors to enjoy cleaner air and natural ecosystems. Not everyone has a normal trip, though. There's some who end up encountering things that they didn't expect, leading them to question the true nature of national parks and whether they're hiding something not quite human. A post was submitted to Reddit in which someone detailed their encounter with something strange. They said the following: "I've worked and lived in North Carolina for 30 years now, and this is the first time that I've experienced anything strange. I often travel around the various national parks that can be found throughout North Carolina. And on this one occasion, I saw what I can only describe was a large 7-foot-tall creature. My encounter happened while I was exploring the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, a long 2,000-plus-mile area full of woods. While here, I kept hearing loud, knocking sounds coming from around me. Thinking it was perhaps a species of wildlife, I decided to head in the direction of the sound. But as I did, the noises got fainter and fainter, so I thought that whatever was causing it most likely moved on. As it was getting dark, I remember that I was in a small clearing, and suddenly everything around me went silent. It was really bizarre and a little worrying as I was alone. I'm 63 and didn't want to get caught out by anything, and so decided that now would be a good time to head back. As I was walking back through the small opening, though, I could see something between 4 trees. I'd say the trees were around 15 meters away, quite far but enough that I could pick up on details. It looked like something was peering through the gaps in the 4 trees and then darting behind them. As I peered through again, though, I got a much better look at what it was, and the only way I can describe it is that it looked like a giant human, covered in dark brown fur and possessing a low vocal range. Shortly after this, I turned and made my way back as quickly as possible, looking behind my shoulder to make sure that this thing wasn't chasing me. To this day, I can't explain what it was that I encountered. I keep trying to tell myself that it was some type of animal, but I know that it was definitely humanoid in appearance." End quote. Oddly enough, Many humanoid creatures are often encountered by people in national parks, leading amateur researchers to suggest that they may live within these regions, and this is why they're not often encountered by humans. Interestingly, encounters with these creatures isn't anything new. One interesting account comes from 1800. Located on the border of the state of Florida and Georgia is a 438,000-acre swampland that stretches across the state borders and houses a wide variety of undiscovered animals and insect species. This pea-field wetland, referred to as the Okefenokee Swamp, has been at the center of several encounters with the skunk ape creature and is often believed to be the last unexplored refuge of the creatures in the modern day. Even more interesting, the name Okefenokee is a native Creek Indian word that roughly translates to mean the land of the trembling earth, and seems to reference a massive creature that's known for shaking the earth as it walks. The oldest known skunk ape encounter to have occurred within the Okefenokee Swamp was reported back during the winter of 1828. According to the report made by 2 eyewitnesses, both of them were amateur hunters looking to explore the surrounding area. The 2 men came across what they refer to as a giant. Originally, their expedition began as a short hunting party, but rather than turn back at the height of their excitement, the 2 men trip continued for another several weeks, as they traveled deeper into the swamp, recording brief encounters with bears, panthers, alligators, and overgrown snakes. Roughly 3 weeks into their hunting trip, the men claimed to have heard the sound of loud screaming. However, the screams sounded much deeper and louder than a man could naturally produce. As they gazed around the woods surrounding their camp to investigate the source of the noise, the men then heard what they described as the sound of heavy stomping, as if a large creature was running around the woods. Unsure whether or not the creature was a large wild animal or a distressed man, the 2 hunters decided to light a fire and stay within the proximity of their makeshift camp until day lines, as the day was soon ending and darkness was fast approaching. Despite the roaring fire to keep the nearby woods illuminated, the men complained that they were unable to sleep due to the strange sounds, but said that no creature could be seen within the area. By next morning, the men investigated the nearby woods and wetlands, hoping to find any evidence of a creature having prowled their camp the night prior. After a few hours of looking, the men claimed that they came across several barefoot human-looking footprints that would have been impossible for any person to have made, mostly due to the fact that the footprints were spaced roughly 6 feet apart and were an estimated 18 inches in length, worried that the creature might return. The hunters fled the swamp and returned to town. The story of the encounter with the unknown swamp giant does not end there, though. Once the 2 hunters returned to the closest town, they told the nearby townsmen of what they'd encountered and warned that a monster may soon attack the town. Fearful of the beast, the town gathered together a hunting party of 9 men to hunt down the beast and kill it before it could attack anyone. Gathered together, the men went into the swamp and traveled as far down as the southernmost part, now located in the state of Florida. After several days of searching the area, the men located sets of footprints far too large for any normal man to have created and used the footprints as a trail guiding them directly to the giant. As the men began following the footprints, they noticed that they were often spaced increasingly further apart, sometimes disappearing completely and then reappearing elsewhere in the swamps, as if the creature climbed and then jumped between trees for traveling. Before long, the trail was completely lost, and the 9 men decided to make camp for the night and begin their search again at daybreak. Unfortunately for the band of men, during the night the creature would invade the camp and attack the hunters in a fit of rage. According to the 9 witnesses, a massive humanoid creature covered in hair all over its body suddenly ran through camp, toppling over several tents and then began tearing through the equipment. Fearing for their lives, the men grabbed their guns and fired at the creature, causing the giant to retaliate and taking out 5 members of the group. The remaining 4 members continued firing at the creature, sending several rounds of the bullets through its chest, before the creature fell down in a low grumble and passed away shortly after. After closer examination of the giant's body, the men estimated the humanoid creature to have been slightly over 13 feet and appeared to look exactly like a man with the exception of its tremendous size and full body covering of hair. While observing the body, however, the men continued to hear the sounds of screaming in the surrounding woods, similar to what the two hunters had experienced on their journey several days prior. Believing that the screaming could be coming from a dozen more of the giant creatures, the men packed up their equipment and began moving out of the swamp during the night, unable to wait until morning out of fear that another attack would take place. Once the four men returned to the nearest town, they told the townspeople what happened to the 5 other men who were attacked, and they estimated that a dozen more of the giant creatures were still out there. Fearing that an attack would eventually reach the town, the men began traveling throughout the area and warning people of an impending attack from giants. On the 1st of January, 1829, a local reporter that wrote for the Georgia newspaper Statesman would interview the men and retell their story for local publishing. By February of that year, less than 30 days after the original publication, reprintings of the story spread to the neighboring communities and would see a February issue published in the Connecticut newspaper of the Sentinel, warning traveling parties to stay clear of the Okefenokee Swamp. After a few decades, the sensationalism of the story eventually died down and became nothing more than a local legend. To this day, travelers are still warned of the Okefenokee swamp giants and told to be careful when going through the region. So what do you make these interesting stories? The M42 is a nebula that can be found in the Milky Way galaxy. It's better known as the Orion Nebula, and it's been detailed by many ancient cultures throughout our history. The Orion Nebula can be seen without the use of a telescope, making it one of the most viewed and photographed nebulas. A few years back, astronomers spotted an interesting object while looking through photographs of the Orion Nebula they'd captured. The astronomer was using a powerful telescope and decided to photograph Orion. But when they reviewed the images, they could see that a large cigar-shaped object could be seen. They said the following: "This is not the first time and definitely not the last time as I searched the night skies for galaxies and nebulas. The truth is out there." End quote. They also submitted the photograph to MoveOn, a large online database that collects images and data of strange crafts that have been witnessed all around the world. Oddly enough, this isn't the first time that amateur astronomers have captured these strange-looking objects on camera, going on to say that these objects are very long, and that they don't match anything within the area. When asked whether these cigar-shaped objects were something like a comet or a camera anomaly, the astronomer responded by saying that this isn't how comet, space debris, or camera anomalies show up during astrophotography. As for what these objects are, though, is anyone's guess. Due to a MUA matching the description of this object, some have suggested that a number of these objects exist throughout the Milky Way galaxy, further noting that they could be things like probes that have traveled from a distant galaxy. The fact that this one was detected south of Orion's belt in the constellation of Orion has led some to suggest that they could be scattered all throughout our galactic neighborhood. What these objects are, though, is still heavily debated. The truth is, as of right now, we don't know what Oumuamua was. It had many characteristics that didn't match things like a comet or an asteroid. There's even a group of highly qualified astronomers that have suggested that Oumuamua may have been a probe sent from another planet, similar to probes that we've sent out. If this is the case, we could have been observed by an advanced piece of technology, an idea that has excited many researchers. With hundreds of billions of planets residing within the Milky Way galaxy alone, it's important that we keep an open mind when it comes to objects like this, especially when they don't match typical space objects. Whether the object that was photographed in the Orion Nebula is the same thing as Oumuamua is up for debate, but one thing that's for certain is that the two objects share the same overall look. It's not just strange objects that have been detected out in the cosmos. Recently, a NASA probe that was traveling beyond the solar system detected a mysterious hum. The probe that was traveling over 14 billion miles away from Earth picked up on the strange vibrations after entering deep space. The equipment that detected the noise was that of the Voyager 1 spacecraft. Scientists published the discovery in the journal Nature Astronomy and said that it's helping us to understand deep space and what could potentially reside there. Understanding what this area of space is like is also helping us with space exploration and setting us up in a good place in order to explore the final frontier. Stella Acker, a doctoral student at Cornell University in New York, said the following: Voyager 1 is an interesting region of space that is outside this thing called the heliosphere, which is the protective bubble that encases all the planets in the solar system. So it's really our only tool for directly sampling the nature of interstellar space. Oka and our colleagues have said that as of right now, they don't know what's causing this mysterious noise, but have said it opens up a new field of study. These noises were measured through ripples of plasma in what's known as the interstellar medium. This new finding shows researchers that there are vibrations within this medium, and that once we start to understand them better, it'll help us to figure out specific properties of its environment. Marav Appa, a professor of astronomy at Boston University who is not involved with the new research, said the following: rather than trying to map the geography around my house based on 1 or 2 trees in my yard, this will help me map all the way from my house to the next neighborhood. End quote. This mysterious hum was detected back in 2017. But what's strange is that it passed into stellar space 5 years prior. So strange why this probe has only just detected this sound. The team of scientists working on the project have said that it could be some type of lag. But again, this isn't entirely understood. Marajev said the discovery was phenomenal because it's the first step in helping us to understand what lies beyond these systems. Marajev continued with the following: it's almost 10 years now that Voyager 1 has been in interstellar space, and we see that the influence of the sun is still pretty strong. It's the engineering gift to science that keeps on giving. End quote. The Voyager 1 spacecraft also revealed to us that Io is the first place outside of Earth to have erupting volcanoes. Not only did Io make history as the first to be seen to have erupting volcanoes, but the 400 volcanic craters can produce eruptions that reach heights of a staggering 300 miles. Despite this impressive volcanic activity, there's still a lot about the volcanoes in Io that are shrouded in mystery. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? And what do you think this object is that was captured in the Araya Nebula? The ocean is one of the most mysterious places. Various parts of it remain unexplored. The U.S. Navy has recently come forward and announced that their equipment has picked up something mysterious moving at fast speeds under the ocean. The sonar data confirmed that the objects in question didn't match typical recordings they'd usually see, and happened around the same time as other strange reports. For years, though, officials denied that these encounters were anything of interest. Now, though, documents, testimonies, and eyewitness reports have proven that these people were onto something. As various other pilots and Navy officials have said that there's mysterious crafts in our ocean. U.S. submarines have detected mysterious underwater crafts, saying that they're traveling at hundreds of knots beneath the ocean, with Tom Rogan being one of the people who shared this story, saying that the United States Navy has data showing that submarines have detected a number of mysterious high-speed crafts, with them buzzing naval ships and then disappearing at fast speeds. Mr. Rogan said the following about the reports: I think what we may be looking at is a true unknown, which is to say intelligently controlled machinery that is not understood to be in the possession of the United States, China, or Russia, which are the 3 most advanced countries in terms of military aviation. Researching this, there isn't anything that we have top secret information about what China or Russia have, or what we have at any of our top secret installations that can do what these things do in terms of performance. In the coming months and years, an area we will learn more about is the interaction between U.S. Navy submarines, nuclear ballistic submarines, and attack submarines, picking up sonar contact to things moving at hundreds of knots under the ocean. So there's a sort of undersea dimension to this that the Navy has sort of pushed aside. This is in the Wakers pilots talk more about their experiences. One of the things we're going to find is that over a period of decades, a lot of the data, a lot of the measurements of these things has been put off as a technical aberration or essentially a data malfunction, because they didn't want to really admit that something very serious and special was going on. End quote. Researchers have said that the U.S. Navy is well aware of what these objects are, and that at the moment they aren't releasing too much information about these things, with some amateur researchers saying that in the past, Navy officials have detailed what they're picking up on, and have said that these mysterious crafts have been seen entering and exiting the ocean. have a form of propulsion that's unlike anything we have, are able to go under the ocean without making a splash, and can easily outmaneuver things like jets. Astronomer Mark D'Antonio was taken for a ride on an attack submarine, and during this the sub encountered an unknown fast-moving object on sonar. He said the following as a thank you for doing some work for them. The Navy asked me if I wanted to go for a ride in a submarine, so I said yes. Once we got under, I was sitting in the sonar station and the sonar operator was sitting right next to me. Submarines are loud. People think they're very quiet, and it's true they are on the outside, because the sound doesn't get out. But inside you hear fans and various other noises. It's a constant din on a sub. I was sitting there zoning out a little because I was seasick, and all of a sudden the sonar kid shouts, fast mover, and I'm jolted awake, thinking what's happening. Is it a torpedo? The executive officer comes in and the operator shows him the path of the object, and the officer says, how fast is that going? And the kid said several hundred knots. I start to lean forward to listen in, and the officer said, can you confirm it? So we went to another sonar machine and confirmed it wasn't a machine anomaly. It was real. I thought, wow, that's incredible. When the sonar guy said, what should I do with this? The officer said, log it and dog it. In other words, log it and bury it. For years later, Mark asked a senior naval figure about what he saw, saying the following. Can you tell me about the Fast Mover program? He looked at me and said, sorry, Mark, I can't talk about that program. So he basically confirmed to me that the program exists. There's definitely no shortage of these mysterious crafts, and recent comments by U.S. officials have only caused people to demand answers for what these objects are. John Ratcliffe recently said the following. We are talking about objects that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain. Movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without making a sonic boom. As of right now, people are still waiting on an official answer for what it was that the Navy encountered, along with other reports that come in from everyday people, including fishermen that spend large amounts of time on the ocean. Many of these eyewitnesses are just everyday people who've encountered something that they couldn't explain. What these objects are and how they're able to achieve what they do is still a mystery. So what do you make of these interesting stories? The majority of reported dogman sightings appear to cluster in only a handful of states throughout the Midwest and along the East Coast. One of the states that appears to be a major hotspot for dogman sightings, with a large majority of the sightings seemingly reported in the areas immediately surrounding Native American reservations, also appears to be at the center of a number of other humanoid creature myths. Located in West Virginia, several cryptid hotspots have been recorded in areas surrounding Mason and Boone County, with a large number of recorded encounters of a creature fitting the description of the dogman surrounding the Williams Mountain. Although it's also assumed that many of the dogman sightings within West Virginia are also Bigfoot sightings, with the state being one of the largest Sasquatch hotspots in the country, many direct witness sightings specifically describe a bipedal with a dog-like face. This has led many researchers down a variety of rabbit holes, attempting to explain what appears that such a large number of sightings are concentrated within the stains, though it has become impossible to track down and verify the creature's existence. Some have theorized that perhaps the dogman creature is far more supernatural than natural, and disappears similar to an apparition shortly after being sighted. Now the theory, however, believes that something far more sinister might be occurring, and that the strange, unsanctioned experiments of the United States might be responsible. Back during the 14th of January in the year 2014, a woman claimed to have had a direct encounter with the dogman of West Virginia while she had been sitting on her porch outside in the late evening. According to the witness report, the woman who chose to remain anonymous claimed that she'd stepped outside sometime around 11 p.m. to take a break when she noticed a strange movement across the street. Living on the 2600 block of Madison Avenue, she was often familiar with occasionally spotting large animals near the road, but was unable to accurately identify a strange humanoid-shaped creature standing near the railroad tracks, located just across the street. Wishing to get a more accurate look at the creature, the woman opened her porch window to look out from the enclosed space and to let in some fresh air. With the aid of the streetlights, she claimed to have seen what she described as a giant man, standing 8 feet tall with the head of a German shepherd. Unsure of what she was witnessing, the woman began to wonder if she was witnessing something far more dangerous than she realized. According to the woman, roughly 40 feet from her home, the Rest Defense military depot that's believed to be roughly 84 acres in size. Although the depot is still an active location for the United States military, it's often ignored entirely by the local population surrounding the area. Oddly enough, however, the creature appeared to have been walking in the direction away from the depot, as if the creature had somehow left the enclosed facility and was now walking down the length of the railroad tracks. As she continued watching the creature, the security lights from the Point Pleasant depot turned on and helped to illuminate this strange creature even more clearly. It was at this moment that the woman claimed the animal to have looked like a movie depiction of a large werewolf with the face of a German shepherd. Although she was uncertain what color the creature was, she believed it to have been a darker gray or light ashy black, though was unable to know for sure. As she continued watching the creature, she suddenly noticed that the neighborhood dogs were loudly barking and yelling, as if they could smell the creature from a distance. As the dogs continued to bark, the creature turned in the direction of the woman and spotted her in the window. Frozen in fear, the woman claimed that she felt as if she had been hypnotized and was unable to move or run away from the oncoming creature, which appeared to step off the railroad tracks and began to wander towards the street. In a stroke of luck, the woman's mother drove up to the house, causing the creature to run away into the nearby wilderness. Feeling as if she snapped out of the strange hypnotism, the woman immediately ran down to the car and told her mother what she'd seen on the railroad tracks, and if she'd seen it while driving up. Given the fact that it was almost 11 p.m. at this time, the woman claimed she'd been too tired to notice and didn't see anything near the side of the road or in the direction of the railroad tracks. Unfortunately, before the woman could point the creature to show her mother, it had already vanished from the area. Although some skeptics have assumed that the sighting of the creature was nothing more than a stress hallucination caused by a nicotine addiction. Given the fact that the mother had not seen a creature despite driving within 30 feet of the strange beast, researcher George Studding argues differently. According to George Studding, he investigated the story and drove down to the location of the sighting to see if it would be possible to clearly see across the open railroad tracks and while standing from the port of the home. Dardenne would write in his novel Dogmen of Michigan, Wisconsin, and West Virginia that while traveling through the area by car, it was very easy not to notice any objects on the road, given the sporadic placement of large thick trees that obstructed a driver's view. However, he noticed that a witness looking directly at the tree line from a perpendicular position would be able to clearly see the railroad tracks and any personal creatures standing on or near them. Despite the fact that this sighting of the dogman occurred back in 2014, many of the dogman sightings throughout West Virginia can be traced back to strange humanoid animal sightings dating back as early as the 1960s. From around the same time, many strange war experiments were taking place across the United States and the Soviet Union for the purpose of competitive edge. So what do you make of these interesting reports? Our world is rife with mysteries and enigmas. Through the years, a myriad of wondrous events have occurred and thousands of amazing discoveries have been made. We can never be quite sure what lies beyond the horizon. Between archaeological wonders and the rapid development of technology, there is an unbound potential for our future. So today we'll be taking a look at recent discoveries. A mysterious 60-foot hole appeared on the side of Mount Shasta. Over 10 years ago, a random hole appeared on the side of Mount Shasta, seemingly overnight. It was built using a simple makeshift pulley system and reached about 60 feet deep. It was as if someone tried to dig into the volcano, which surprised the locals and Forest Service. The offenders had only left behind a few buckets, a smart water bottle, and a ladder to signify their presence. For the past decade, locals and mystery enthusiasts have been trying to figure out the reason and cause for this strange hole. There are currently 3 main theories to explain it. The first theory is related to the legend of Lemuria. Some town inhabitants believe that there is a lost continent underneath Mount Shasta called Lemuria, with its capital city, Telos. It is named after the word Lima, because an English zoologist in the 19th century theorized the lemurs traveled to Madagascar from India using this lost continent. For some reason, it ended up buried underneath a mountain range in California. Some people have even reported seeing robed Lemurian citizens traveling through the mountains and visiting the town's shops. The diggers might have been attempting to reach the lost city through the hole. The mountain is also considered sacred to the First Nation tribe, Winnemem-Wintu, indigenous to the area surrounding the McCloud River in Northern California. The people have a spiritual connection to the mountain and regard themselves as its watchers because their tribe came out of the mountain thousands of years ago. The second theory regarding the hole is that the culprits were digging for Native American artifacts. This area has been rife with looting for many years, as artifacts can sell for a very high price. It is illegal to dig without a permit, resulting in fines of up to $20,000 and potential jailing for up to 1 year. Police explained that looters typically work at night and dig using the same pulley method seen with the hole. However, the Forest Service and Winnemem-Wintu tribe do not believe it was looters. It is improbable any artifacts are in the area since leaving items would disrespect the spirits and mountain. The Forest Service argued for the third theory. Someone was mining for gold. There was a bit of gold found in the town's relative area during the gold rush era, so the offenders might have tried to find some. However, the location of the hole is unlikely to provide any gold because of its volcanic geology. Regardless of which theory you believe, the case is still unsolved. No one figured out who dug the hole, and the rangers were quick to fill it to prevent any accidents. Whether it was to find it seems that it will always remain a mystery. Graves of nearly 600 cats and dogs in ancient Egypt may be the world's oldest pet cemetery. Nearly 600 cats and dogs lie in a cemetery on the western coast of the Red Sea in Egypt. The tombs are over 2,000 years old and show that the animals were buried with their collars. Archaeologists have assumed that this place, discovered 10 years ago and which had not been studied in depth until now, is the oldest known pet necropolis, which pets were buried with them, saying that even then it seems animals were treated as a member of the family. The holy field appeared in dunes outside the city walls. Researchers from the Polish Academy of Sciences found it under a Roman garbage dump and believe the cemetery was used especially between the mid-1st to mid-2nd century AD, when the west coast of Berenice was a bustling center that traded ivory, fabrics, and other luxury goods from India, Arabia, and Europe. The team led by Marta Osipinska had already unearthed the remains of about 100 animals, most of which were cats. Despite evidence showing that they had been cared for as pets, some archaeologists raised the possibility that the bones had been discarded as garbage. Now 585 skeletons have been found, which have been analyzed in detail thanks to the help of a veterinarian, who determined the cause of death, diet, and even the health of the pets. The conclusion is that all these pets were carefully deposited in well-prepared pits, as explained in an article published in the journal World Archaeology. Many were also covered with textiles or ceramic pieces that formed a kind of sarcophagus. Cats, which accounted for 90% of the total remains, wore iron collars or other threaded glass and shells. But there were also dogs and 2 different species of macaque monkeys. Some of these animals came from outside the African continent. Among the pets buried at Berenice were many with injuries and illnesses that would have prevented their survival. The canines, which accounted for about 5% of the burials, tended to be older when they died. Many had lost almost all their teeth and suffered from joint degeneration. In the cemetery, however, not a single mummification was found, nor was there any trace of deliberate animal sacrifice or slaughter, something that was widespread in the Nile Valley. This space was a place with ambiguous cultural rules, say specialists. It was not very Egyptian, despite its location, but not very Roman either, despite political domination and economic control, they conclude. Sacsayhuaman in Peru. The word Sacsayhuaman comes from the Quechua language, translates roughly to royal eagle or more literally the place where the hawk was satiated. It is thought that it gained this name due to the high presence of these birds in the area where the structure was built. Sacsayhuaman is an architectural complex in the city of Cusco, Peru. The building was erected by the Incas in the 15th century under the 9th Incan leader Pachacuti Inca, Yupanqui and his successors. A project as massive as this necessitated the hard work of at least 20,000 laborers, which were divided by the thousands and given jobs such as quarrying duties, digging trenches, and laying the foundations of this huge monument. This fortress is the largest built by the Incas. It was constructed on an elevated rocky head, facing the northern marshy ground outside the Incan capital Cusco. The Incas were known as master stonemasons, and their abilities are demonstrated wonderfully in this building. It was built using dry stone walls and boulders that were fit tightly together using mortar. Although they did not use anything to cement the stones together, their mechanics ensured that the building stood strong and stable. The huge blocks of stone making up the temple were shaped using nothing but harder rocks and bronze tools. Based on the marks left on these stones, researchers believe they were mostly pounded into shape rather than being cut. The blocks must have been moved around using ropes, levers, poles, and earth-made ramps. This is evident due to the indentations that remained on the stones even after they were fit into place in the building. It was built to withstand earthquakes and the damage from such natural disasters through the interlocking of the blocks and sloped walls, which maximized protection. It is definitely apparent that this proved to be successful, as the building has survived over 500 years of earthquakes. The area also contains a variety of buildings such as residential spaces, towers, holy places, warehouses, roadways, and aqueducts. Positioning and placing of the area is similar to other Incan locations, like the Machu Picchu. It stands as a testament to the Incas' skills in architecture and their ability to create a structure that worked in harmony with the natural landscape of the place. It is simply incredible to see the remains of history and the magnificent skills and abilities of those who lived before us, and to be able to witness the architectural pursuits that were accomplished without the use of modern technology and resources. Gaspar and Miguel Cotrial. At the dawn of the 1500s, two brotherly explorers went missing on their journeys. Gaspar and Miguel Cotrial were the first amongst sailors and captains to travel the northeastern coast of America. The Cotrial family were a noble Portuguese house. Gaspar was allegedly the more aggressive of the brothers. In 1499, he heard that King Manuel I granted John Fernandez the right to lead an expedition to the North Atlantic as the king wished to control the Northwest Passage to India and Spice Islands. However, Fernandez did not take the grant immediately, so Gaspar took the chance and gained royal permission to set out on an expedition of his own in the summer of 1500. He took a trio of ships with him, funded by his noble family. Gaspar Cotrial explored the shoreline of Greenland firstly. Meeting with the native population, the harsh winter icebergs caused him and his men to leave the land and return to Portugal in the winter of 1500. In May 1501, he set out on another expedition to discover the unknown lands in the northwest with his brother Miguel, and landed in Labrador exploring the coast. Miguel returned home with two ships to report their wondrous discoveries after they went 600 miles inland, expecting Gaspar to return soon thereafter. When he didn't arrive, Miguel set out to find him on a rescue mission funded by the king with 3 ships in 1502. Gaspar Cotrial mysteriously disappeared on the shores of Labrador seemingly overnight. Miguel's 3 ships ended up in New meeting up at the agreed place on the agreed day. Miguel's ship was never found, assumed lost at sea during a suspected storm. Concerned for the noble brothers, the king himself financed a 3rd rescue mission in 1503, banning their 3rd brother from going and instead sent a government official. The men were never found. And what do you make of these recent discoveries? Our universe is full of incredible wonders. We've only just started to scratch the surface of what space has to offer. And although scientists and researchers are trying to unravel these discoveries, sometimes it leaves us asking more questions. In recent years, Teams of scientists have started to look into things such as the multiverse, different dimensions, how time works, quantum entanglements, and also consciousness. Interestingly, Max Lorvlin, who's been labeled as one of the smartest kids in the world, has been vocal about these topics and has made several videos going into detail about how our world works and how humans can live in a world where things like energy is free. In fact, he, along with his parents, have come forward in detail that at the young age of 13, he invented a free energy device, saying that this could be used across the entire world to help shape the way that humans live. After this, he started to look into different topics such as space, the universe around us, and also parallel universes. One of his theories was that sun destroyed our universe and now we live in another universe that was parallel to ours. With him saying that this is where things like we remember things from that previous universe, but life in this one is slightly different. There are many theories and ideas that years ago you would have been mocked for believing in. However, now scientists are taking things like parallel universes much more seriously. In fact, just recently Elon Musk along with a bunch of researchers suggested that we live in a simulation. Scientific American even confirmed these reports by saying the following on their website. So there you have it. The simplest explanation for the existence of consciousness is that it's an experience that's being created by our bodies, but not by us. We are qualia-generating machines. Like characters in a video game, we exist to create integrated audiovisual outputs. Also, as with characters in certain video games, our product is most likely for the benefit of someone experiencing our lives through us. Max Lorvlin said the following about his theories. There's an infinite amount of parallel universes in our multiverse, and there's an infinite number of these realities. In each reality, we're catapulted into an infinite number of alternate universes. We had an original timeline, but as soon as it started, we were infinitely catapulted into an infinite number of parallel universes. And somewhere down the line, here's our universe, and we're constantly shifting into an alternate universe as we speak. And this expression of infinite universes is our reality as we know it. So therefore, if there are other universes that are next to us, and this relates to my theory of the Mandela effect, and how the particle accelerator altered one electron and therefore destroyed our universe and shifted us into the universe that was directly next to it, and therefore things are different in this universe. He was then asked his opinion on the Mandela effect and what it is. He responded with the following: the Mandela effect is real, and some people believe that Nelson Mandela passed away at a certain time when he didn't. This goes for many other things like Star Wars and video games. One example is Mirror on the Wall. But when you look back to the original film, it's Magic Mirror on the Wall. And the reality is that some people are certain that it's not Magic Mirror. That's the Mandela effect. And we're living in an alternate expansion of our universe. In my scientific notes, I found rewritten signatures, things that are a bit different from what I wrote. Max was then asked how the Mandela effect happened and how it changed things. He said the following: "It never changed, we changed. You see, we're moving relative to our universe, and our universe was destroyed. So now our parallel universe started to move parallel to us, because we were out of alignment." When asked what happened with Mirror on the Wall and Magic Mirror on the Wall, he said that it wasn't two studios, but rather a different timeline. Our universe was out of balance due to the Large Hadron Collider, a single electron which I believe shifted us into a parallel universe. Considering that because of a chain reaction that had a huge reaction on our universe, I believe the Large Hadron Collider set off a huge chain of events. And that everything as we know it shifted into this parallel universe. This is my belief. Of course, this is just a theory, and I'm still developing it. But within that small moment of time, we were instantly shifted. It could be possible that people at CERN saw this little vulnerability in the space-time continuum, and they may have gone in and picked out these iconic moments and changed them to prove that reality is not what we think it is. This could be true, and it's theories that they're working on portals there, and that these changes have come in order to bridge the universe. These are just fairy tales, but all fairy tales are based on something. The previous universe was destroyed, but there's an infinite number of parallel universes, and that means that there's an infinite possibility that everything contained within this range existed and will happen. For example, there's a reality where it's possible this world didn't even occur. Maybe there's a reality where our universe stopped and then destroyed itself. There's an infinite number of possibilities. There is something larger than everything. It's even a paradox itself. We're not going to figure this out for a while, but I think that I figured this stuff out. But as of right now, all of this stuff is just a theory. It's hard to prove a theory about alternate reality and multiverses. I think I have a basic idea of what is possibly happening. It's all theoretical, and really it's just a matter of how much I think I can explain it. The further away a universe is, the more different it is because of each individual event. Now the distance and amount of universe between us and others is infinite. Somewhere between these lines of universes, though, we have a parallel universe. And in this parallel universe, maybe it's completely different. Everything is completely different. Maybe our entire existence is nothing and never happened. But maybe time is running backwards. Or maybe everything is slightly off. Like universes are formed from nuclear reactions. In all of these universes, the possibilities are endless. End quote. Interestingly, a group of physicists have suggested that the Large Hadron Collider is close to uncovering the existence of parallel universes. In a paper published in the Physics Letters, the team of physicists said the following: normally when people think of the multiverse, they think of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, where every possibility is actualized. This cannot be tested, and so it's a philosophy and not science. This is not what we mean by parallel universes. What we mean is real universes in extra dimensions. As gravity can flow out of our universe into the extra dimensions, such a model can be tested by the detection of a mini black holes at the Large Hadron Collider. We have calculated the energy at which we expect to detect these mini black holes in gravity's rainbow, which is a new theory. If we do detect mini black holes at this energy, then we'll know that gravity's rainbow and extra dimensions are correct. So what do you guys make of Max's comments? And do you think that parallel universes and the multiverse exists? People disappear every day in strange and mysterious ways. Some vanish from right under the noses of their family, while others might accidentally wander off or become victims of foul play. Some are lucky enough to be found, while many others are never seen or heard from again. So today we will be looking at instances where people disappeared. Joshua Maddox was a normal 18-year-old who lived in the Pike National Forest in Teller County, Colorado in 2008. He loved nature and hiking, so when he left to go on a walk one day, nobody thought anything of it until he failed to return that night. His disappearance sparked searches all over the area for months, hoping to uncover Josh safe and sound, or at least get some answers as to what might have happened to him. However, he was never found and continued to be listed as a missing person for years. In a seemingly unrelated course of events in 2015, a builder who owned an old decaying cabin in the woods that had been abandoned for over 10 years decided to demolish it in order to begin developing the land that it stood on. Before demolition, the builder came out to check that everything was in order and entered the cabin for the first time in many years. He noticed a smell of rot and decay in the cabin, but attributed it to the many animals who made the decrepit building their home in the intervening years. However, when demolition began, starting with taking apart the chimney to reuse the bricks, workers were horrified to discover that there was a body of a young man inside the chimney, which was likely the source of the smell. The police and coroner were called to investigate and remove the body, and his dental records as the body of Joshua Maddox. Maddox was found in a fetal position, with his legs curled up under his chest and his feet above his head, leading investigators to hypothesize that he might have gotten stuck in an attempt to enter the abandoned building and explore. Although the coroner agreed with this guess, as the autopsy did not reveal any trauma or suspicious substances and ruled the end of his life as accidental. There are those who disagree. The heavy metal grate covering the chimney had disappeared, and a heavy breakfast bar had been forcibly removed from the wall and dragged in front of the chimney to cover it. Additionally, many thought it was odd that Joshua would have voluntarily entered the chimney head first, and his clothing was found folded inside of the cabin next to the fireplace. He had only been wearing a thin thermal shirt when he entered the chimney. The police were never able to determine what had actually happened, and the case remains a mystery to this day. Jason Jalkowski's disappearance. June is the favorite season of many people. The midsummer is the perfect time to unwind. Jason Jalkowski was doing just that when he picked up the phone. Jason, 19 at the time, was called by his boss from the restaurant he worked at asking if he could come in early. Jason was described as a hard-working man, but a hailstorm damaged his car and prohibited him from getting to work as he worked for his boss. Organized for a coworker to pick him up at the local school. But he never made it to meet with the coworker. After 15 minutes of waiting for him to arrive, Jason's coworker called their boss to inform him he was not there. She returned to work another 15 minutes later. Jason never came to work. Jason's family came home and found him still missing. The family searched for their son. Jason was a religious teenager and not the running away from home type. An honor student at his old school. He did, however, have a mild disability when it came to slurring and speech. He was in financial trouble and required jobs to keep afloat. Jim and Kelly, Jason's parents, were convinced that something disastrous must have happened. He never skipped work and was not with any of his friends either. The following morning, his family reported him as missing, but the police refused to help, telling the parents that the teen likely just went out with friends for the weekend and would surely return. The family and friends of Jason went looking for him, putting up posters and even having news of his disappearance run in the local radio station. By this point, the group of Jason's loved ones were certain he was hurt, if not fearing the worst. No news of his whereabouts ever turned up, but it forced the police into action, and although it was belated, they gave the investigation their all. But by then it was too late to find worthwhile evidence. There was no evidence at all. Simply vanished. No clues to follow. 2 weeks from his initial disappearance, the police got word of a boy with his description seen at the Mahoney State Park, but found nothing to prove he had been there. The family did everything in their power to find their son, with Kelly even beginning the organization Protect Jason to raise awareness. Now, 20 years later, his case continues to baffle investigators. Jason lacked funds to leave and begin a new life, nor was he the kind of man to do so. He also planned on working that day, and his car was being repaired. Since he went missing, his bank account and social security number have remained untouched. His family refused to believe the theory that he took his life due to his religious faith, and he was an upbeat individual who presented no sign of sorrow. They believed to this day that he was taken and someone had ended his life. Nobody ever found. Disappearances are one of the hardest things families have to go through. Hope can be both a blessing and a curse. People disappear every single day, with cases sometimes forever remaining unsolved. Others can be solved decades afterwards, but the only certainty is uncertainty. The chilling disappearance of Sammy Burlka. Vacations are supposed to be abundant with family fun and timeless memories. But for a certain family, a would-be exciting trip turned into a living nightmare. Sammy Burlka was an 8-year-old boy and the son of Kenneth Burlka. When talking about his son, Kenneth described him as a passionate but stubborn young boy who was on the high-functioning side of the autistic spectrum, which resulted in Sammy being easily overwhelmed by brightness and sound. The boy stood at 4 feet and 11 inches in height and weighed an estimated 85 pounds. He had dark eyes and brown hair cut in a short hairstyle. The family was staying in a cabin near Diamond Lake when the tragedy occurred. He disappeared in October. The Burlka family had prior camping experience, and Sammy grew up learning important survival tricks, but no amount of teaching could ensure a vulnerable child's survival. The vast wilderness of Oregon. Kenneth and Sammy went out to play a game of either tag or hide and seek at around 4 in the afternoon. The reason for this roadside game is unknown, and Kenneth's motives have since been suspected as impure. The father and child played until Sammy spotted a radiant shade of yellow peeking out from the ground, believing it to be gold. Due to the autumn period, it was already getting dark, and Kenneth wanted to go to their cabin, heading off to the cinder slope where they had been playing moments prior. As Kenneth Burker went to his car, he assumed his son would follow, but he did not. Instead, Sammy vehemently refused to leave or even step off the cinder slope and began running away from his father when he tried to chase after him. It is assumed that Sammy believed Kenneth was just playing with him. After the fact, Kenneth stated, "I never caught up with him, and at that point he disappeared over the top somewhere and I lost him." After Sammy's disappearance was reported, over 200 people helped with the area's search for the boy, traveling and combing a total area of 4,000 acres. An entire week passed by with trained dogs and even the use of helicopters, but it was to no avail. Never again would Sammy be seen by anyone. Kenneth's story has been criticized by police and speculators alike. It seems suspicious that a young autistic boy seemed to suddenly run from his father and disappear in plain sight by running straight into the wilderness without any other witnesses. However, no proof of foul play was ever discovered. Brandon Lawson in 2013, father of 4 Brandon Lawson, went missing. His case captured the attention of the public and online speculation grew. For years, Brandon had been a dedicated family man with his 4 children and fiancée Ladika. The 26-year-old was an oil field worker, often working up to 95 hours a week. Despite the family-orientated attitude, he did have a criminal past. Brandon had a run-in with the law and a bench warrant due to his substance use. He spent time behind bars but had been using again in the run-up to his disappearance. Home from a long shift on August 9, 2013, Brandon and his fiancée had a row. Ladessa was angry at him not returning home and with his substance abuse, whilst Brandon is described as having been in panic mode. He quickly left, claiming he was driving to his father's 3.5 hours away. Ladessa, concerned about his state of mind and unsure if he was high at the time, called and asked him to instead walk to his brother's, believing him to be unfit behind the wheel. We do not know if Brandon intended to follow his fiancée's advice or not. He did switch his route from Highway 277 to Highway 67, though he could have decided back roads would keep him out of the way of the police. Running low on gas, we know Brandon stopped to top up on his way and called Brandon's brother, Kyle, seeking his help. Kyle and his girlfriend arrived at Brandon and Ladika's home at approximately 12:10 a.m. Not long after Brandon had been on the road, he too tried to reach Kyle, telling him he needed gas brought to him as he had gotten stuck on Highway 277. With broken service and speech slurred, presumably due to substance abuse, it was tricky to make out Brandon's message. Though Kyle thinks Brandon told him he was 10 minutes up the road to hurry up and said that he was being chased out of town. Kyle's first impressions were that stimulants had resulted in paranoid hallucinations, though Brandon insisted he was not. Ladessa left a gas can by the front of the house for Kyle to take, then went to bed with her phone left charging elsewhere. She awoke to multiple unanswered calls from both men. When Kyle and his girlfriend found Brandon's truck, he was nowhere to be seen. A police car was seen accompanying it. The police car followed a call made from an onlooker concerned about the truck being a hazard to other vehicles, though this is not the only 911 call that had been made that evening. Brandon himself called 911 requesting police in a manic and slurred call. He claimed people were chasing him into the woods, that he was bleeding, and some even believe there is another voice and firearm shots in the background. Recordings of the 911 call went viral and online strangers took to trying to decipher the message. No dispatcher was sent. Many believe his life was taken from him with his claims to both Kyle and the police of him being chased, the reports of blood and his requests for the police and the alleged second voice on the 911 call. However, investigators found no blood at the site. Some think he ran away, possibly avoiding the police for his substance abuse prison. However, he had already served time and was not afraid to be back behind bars. Some dismissed this theory as he would have been looking at a short sentence and was already working with an attorney facing the felony charge. None of his friends nor family believed he could leave his children. Finally, why would a man running from the police call 911? Perhaps the most common speculation is that Brandon was high, hallucinating, and paranoid, and that he hid to escape his hallucination and passed away in hiding. This seems to be the assumption Kyle holds. We may never know what happened to Brandon Lawson on that August night in 2013. Whilst it is truly devastating when it happens, there are millions of missing persons cases worldwide. Hopefully, we find a concrete answer, and hopefully it is positive news. But what do you make of these unsettling disappearances? It's a sad reality that many cold cases get overlooked, leaving loved ones, family members, and friends desperately looking for answers and clues about what happened. Elizabeth Omotara Santos is one such example. Her sister reached out to me via email, asking if I could bring some attention to her story. Her family members believe that information isn't being given to them, and that there's various inconsistencies with the investigation. Sadly, only one news outlet has covered the story. It's important that when incidents like this happen, as many eyes as possible are placed on the investigation. The family deserves answers. Elizabeth Santos' sister has set up a change.org petition. The link can be found in the comments section. Her sister said the following: "This is with regard to a grave abortion of justice. This is on behalf of my sister Elizabeth Omotara Santos, a Florida native residing in Wasilla. My sister had her life taken away from her while visiting her friend Lizette Hoagland Hall in Anchorage, Alaska on August 8, 2020. Elizabeth had just dumped her boyfriend Dustin Kurpius of 10 years a few days earlier. Was visiting Lizette to clear her head for a few days. My sister was stabbed at least 10 times and passed away due to these injuries in the hospital. This was after she had been handcuffed and placed in the back of an ambulance upon the arrival of the patrol officers. Despite her excessive bleeding, all evidence collected has helped to indicate that foul play was involved. Our families already inquired the local entities such as the Anchorage Police Department and those who have jurisdiction in this matter, like Alaska Bureau of Investigation, the Mayor's Office, and local assembly members, and none have produced comprehensive answers or solutions. The investigating parties overseeing the case have been exceedingly nonchalant, dismissive, and sarcastic, insisting that the fatal injuries to the torso, upper thigh, and vital organs were self-inflicted, despite inconsistent witness statements. Statements from Elizabeth's close friends and associates who have known her for years, and all state that Lizette's story makes no sense, that Elizabeth was not violent and was not a substance user. The only person interviewed by the APD with anything negative to say about Elizabeth was her ex-boyfriend Dustin Kurpius, who is also friends with Desmond Marcus Hall. The police reports even mention Lizette Hoagland Hall wiping up blood on the floor, and this was when crime scene investigators and officers were present. There were clear signs of a struggle as Lizette had scratches and bruises on her face, which stemmed from a physical altercation with Elizabeth minutes before the stabbing. Elizabeth was incoherent when the police officers arrived and couldn't speak clearly because of the excessive internal bleeding. At first, APD insisted that they were treating Lizette and her 22-year-old son Desmond Marcus Hall, who was at home during the assault of suspects, and collected extensive forensic evidence such as their fingerprints in DNA swarms. The detective involved in the case, Jeff Bell, and the supervisor of the Homicide Division, Sergeant Bianca Cross, refused to process any of these forensics, even fingerprints that would at least determine if my sister's prints were on any of these weapons. The suspects were released the same day. The suspects were never charged, and the case was suspended. Our family has reached out to their local media on a number of occasions, yet they continue to bury the story. There have been no reports of the incident, as if it never happened at all. I have contacted the Alaska ACLU and even the Alaska Bar Association. They have never returned any of my emails or calls for the past year. We eventually received photos from the crime scene that was sent months after waiting that included images of the 2 knives that the APD said were used. Neither of the knives have any blood on them, although the police department alleges that my sister used them on herself. The APD refuses to run fingerprints tests on them. We later received footage from the APD of Lizette Hoagland Holt and her son Desmond Marcus Hall being driven to the police station shortly after Elizabeth was taken to hospital, handcuffed with multiple stab wounds. This footage shows Desmond not handcuffed, despite being a suspect, and even smiling and laughing in the back seat of the cop car. One thing that is also strange is that when the ambulance arrived on the scene, they did not depart immediately despite the extent of Elizabeth's injuries. Instead, they waited 37 minutes before leaving the crime scene to go to hospital. There's no reason whatsoever why all of this information should have been dismissed. Instead, Lizette has a criminal record that includes multiple assaults, and an investigating officer, Jason Derville, in which Lizette makes multiple contradictions in her story. Me and my family want justice for my sister Elizabeth, and want these perpetrators to be arrested and charged with her murder. Alaska Police Department Case 20 to 24,631. End quote. Here's the screenshots of the audio recordings as described by Elizabeth Santos' sister. It seems like scientists are publishing fascinating discoveries every day. From extraterrestrial findings to crashing planets, there is a lot of research to interest just about everyone. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries which will have you questioning how much you know about our planet and beyond. Traces of extraterrestrial organic matter found in South Africa's mountains. For the first time, scientists have discovered evidence of extraterrestrial organic matter in terrestrial rocks. The discovery is further confirmation that we have a lot to learn from the meteorites that have hit Earth for billions of years. The new evidence comes from South Africa's Makwanjia Mountains, specifically the Joseph-style chert, a volcanic deposit. Mountain range houses many of the planet's oldest rocks, but it turns out that for some of the rocks it is more than just their age that is interesting. When astrobiologist Frances Westall and her team investigated the Joseph-style chert in 2019, they discovered a rock layer that gave off 2 anomalous signals. Electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy, also known as EPR, showed that it contains 2 distinct forms of insoluble organic matter. The 2 types of matter seem to have extraterrestrial origins, making them the most ancient extraterrestrial organic matter ever found. The first EPR signal bears resemblance to carbonaceous chondrite. Carbonaceous chondrites are segments of primitive meteorites that contain organic compounds. The second anomalous signal consists of nickel, chromium, and iron nanoparticles. The presence of these metal nanoparticles, which are not normally found in terrestrial rocks, also indicate an extraterrestrial background for the rock layer. The metals take the form of cosmic spinels, which are created when space objects like meteorites enter Earth's atmosphere. Researchers are unsure how the 2 distinct anomalous signals came to coexist within the same thin rock layer. The combination of organic compounds and cosmic spinels is puzzling, as hydrogenated organic matter requires temperatures less than a few hundred degrees for survival, while cosmic spinels are created because of the intense heat that melts space objects as they descend through Earth's atmosphere. One possible explanation is that a hail-like shower of micrometeorites combined with volcanic ash clouds in the Earth's atmosphere. Once the matter reached the surface, the extraterrestrial carbon and cosmic spinels were preserved in the same layer of sediment for billions of years. According to Wessel, for this to be possible, the organic matter from the carbon-rich meteorites must have been raining down at quite a high rate. Researchers also question the previous form of the organic matter. It is possible that it is connected to the origins of life on Earth. After all, many scientists believe that life on Earth was made possible at least partially through extraterrestrial molecules. The unknowns from the Joseph-style church discovery are what make it particularly exciting. We are left with no choice but to wonder if the matter could have come from an ancient alien exploration to Earth. Scientists watch distant exoplanet collision. Researchers are discovering that planetary collisions occur much later in the history of a star system than originally thought. In 2019, scientists recorded warm dust in the star system BD plus 20307 for the second time. The amount of dust was a 10% increase from observations made a decade earlier. NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope is responsible for the original debris sighting, but the new data comes from SOFIA, which stands for Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. SOFIA is an airplane telescope owned by NASA and the German Aerospace Center. SOFIA is managed by NASA's Silicon Valley-based Ames Research Center alongside the university's Space Research Association in Columbia, Maryland, and the German Sophia Institute of the University of Stuttgart. The Boeing 747 SP jetliner and the 106-inch diameter telescope that make up SOFIA is operated by NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center in Palmdale, California. SOFIA's telescope revealed the 10% dust increase thanks to FORCAST, which stands for Faint Object Infrared Camera, which can measure infrared brightness. The increased dust is seen as an extra glow beyond what the stars produce themselves and beyond the measurements taken 10 years previously. These changes in the amount of dust within the small span of 10 years suggest that scientists now have the opportunity to study planetary collisions in older exoplanet systems. While dust is not exclusive to collisions, warm dust is not typically found in aged solar systems, and this system contains billion-year-old stars. Planets are originally formed from dust that orbit stars and gradually stick together, forming masses. In new solar systems, leftover debris is easy to come by, but eventually remaining dust particles crash into each other and become so small that they are blown away from the system or pulled into a star. Increased glow in dust can also be explained by extra heat absorption or migration toward stars, but this is not thought to occur in such a short time frame. Therefore, researchers are convinced that a relatively recent collision between two Earth-like exoplanets is causing the dust, which likely happened only a few 100,000 years in the past, may have caused a domino effect of other smaller collisions that create more of this warm dust. While this type of collision happens frequently in younger systems, it is not expected to occur in a system as old as BD plus 20307. While planets crashing may sound like a disaster, this solar system is 300 light-years away, and scientists are excited to observe how the aftermath plays out. It will now be possible to study how a solar system evolves after such a significant impact. We already know that similar collisions have important effects on solar systems. It is thought that our moon is formed from debris created 4.5 billion years ago from a collision between Earth and an object the size of Mars. Now we have the chance to witness something similar in real time. According to Alicia Weinberger, lead investigator and scientist at the Carnegie Institution for Science, this is a rare opportunity to study catastrophic collisions occurring late in a planetary system's history. Hopefully, further observations of the system will help scientists learn more about the evolution of the exoplanet system, leading us to understanding more of our own solar system's past. Chances are we will soon have the answers to what happens when planets collide. HD 169142 in 2019, scientists spotted a newborn exoplanet in the outer rings of the star HD 169142. This star is 1.7 times larger than our Sun, approximately 370 light-years from Earth, and part of the constellation Sagittarius. HD 169142 was studied using a system of radio telescopes called the Atacama Large Mill Array, or ALMA. Researchers looked at the star's protoplanetary disk, a surrounding ring of gas and dust that ultimately clumped together, forming planets and asteroids. Unsurprisingly, researchers found some gaps in the inner protoplanetary disk. This is likely caused by the formation of at least one massive protoplanet. What shocked researchers were the thinner gaps and rings observed in the outer portion of the disk. In this region, scientists expect to see wider and smoother rings. It was determined that this anomaly was most likely formed by an exoplanet about 10 times the size of Earth that has migrated towards the star. Researchers believe that the planet originally formed 69 astronomical units away from HD 169142, but then migrated closer to 64 astronomical units. According to the study's lead, Sebastián Pérez of the University of Santiago in Chile, the community has made great progress on interpreting these sharp rings seen in young planetary systems. This one and other similar experiments open new possibilities of characterization of super-young extrasolar planets. Although the thin rings are unusual, it seems that the mystery has mostly been solved. But what do you make of these three interesting discoveries from around the world? The ancient civilization of Egypt has always been shrouded in mystery. From its religious practices to its long-forgotten language, Egyptian culture has more than enough braided secrets to keep both archaeologists and Egyptologists busy in the pursuit of the truth for many generations to come. Definitely one of the most puzzling mysteries on the planet, the Great Pyramids of Giza had been classified as one of the 7 wonders of our world. The sheer size, precision, and manpower required to build such a colossal structure is nearly impossible, even in the modern era, which makes it all the more mysterious that an ancient culture such as one of the first civilizations ever to arise had the engineering capacity and means to create the massive pyramids of Giza. For a reference to the size of the pyramids, on average each block of the colossal structure with over 2.3 million blocks making up the entirety of the structure. Not only did this require 315 blocks to be moved in place each day for the next 20 years, but to accomplish such a building scale of delivering the lodged stones and moving them into place even today would be at near impossible feat unable to be managed. If a stone wall was made to be 2 feet high and 4 inches wide, using the blocks of the Pyramid of Giza, the wall would wrap around the circumference of the entire world. Not only this, but the blocks were made with such perfect precision that each block appears to be an exact clone in size to the rest of the blocks of the pyramid. Meaning the cut of each stone was so perfect, it would be impossible to side something as thin as a piece of paper between any 2 stones. The only way to accomplish such a precision cut in the modern era would be to rely on laser guiding and cutting. Modern travelers have highlighted these lines between the rocks, and as mentioned in some of the cases, you can't even fit a piece of paper between them, which in turn has only led to more theories being put forward for how the ancient Egyptians were able to achieve what they did. This large-scale effort has never been replicated. However, we have done things in the modern day that's led to people picking up on how impressive these structures are. For example, just recently an interesting video surfaced online which showed 3 large diggers attempting to move a stone block, but the 3 of them couldn't even move the block in the slightest, with some of the diggers even being lifted up due to the weight of the block. Enthusiasts online speculated about the weight of the rock, with some guessing that it weighs in the region of 2 to 6 tons, while the high estimates put the rock at 8 to 15 tons. Regardless though, this is nothing compared to some of the larger blocks that can be found on the pyramids, which weigh between 25 to 80 tons. Regardless of where this construction effort took place, people have shared the same views, questioning how an ancient civilization was able to achieve what they did, especially when in this day and age we're struggling to move these stones with modern machinery. The fact that these 3 machines couldn't even move this block in the slightest shows how impressed this feat is. Modern researchers have said that the ancient Egyptians moved these massive stone blocks by using wooden planks, with archaeologists from the French Institute for Oriental Archaeology in Cairo said that this method is the one they used. Interestingly though, some researchers have spoken out about this method, saying that any discovery that is made from ancient times is impressive and should be preserved in the best way possible, but notes that the pyramid and ramp connection is a bit of a strange. Another thing that researchers have discovered is that the pyramids themselves aren't just massive stone structures. As new discoveries and 3D mapping of the pyramid continues, even more mysterious natures of their structures were found, with archaeologists and Egyptologists saying that they found high traces of chemical compounds throughout the shards of the pyramids, and that they had the ability to generate a massive amount of hydrogen by utilizing commonly found base chemicals in the region. This has led some to theorize that the pyramids themselves could have once been powerful hydrogen generators capable of supplying electricity and energy similar to modern-day power plants. Considering no other explanations for the trace chemicals have been posted forward with any success, it appears to be the only standing theory relative to explaining any purpose that the pyramid had. Considering not a single body or artifact has been found inside the structures, including chambers never previously opened inside the colossal structure. Whatever theory you subscribe to, the nature of the pyramids are not just a mystery of idioms, but a mystery of the history of humanity. One of the most overwhelming pieces can also be found by looking at these massive structures and the math used to construct them, the royal cubit. The ancient Egyptian royal cubit is the oldest attested standard of measurement, dating further back than 4000 BCE, making it one of man's earliest tools used in construction. The strange thing about this is not the age of the measurement system, but rather the math behind it. The Egyptian royal cubit is exactly equal to pi minus pi squared. It uses a perfect measurement of well-known mathematical discoveries in the modern age to get perfect units of measurement. Interestingly enough, this unit is a perfect subdivision of the circumference of the Earth. Many scholars will wrongly assume that the Egyptian royal cubit was measured by using the distance from the pharaoh's elbow to his fingertip. But that is far from the truth. This means that not only did the Egyptians base their measurement off the subdivision of the Earth itself, but also mapped out the Earth-size rotation movements, and even the latitude and longitude of the planet all the way back in 400 BCE. For those that believe this could be impossible, the Pyramidic Giza uses this real cubit measurement system and comes out to a perfect subdivision of Earth, being exactly 1 out of 172,800 units of the Earth's circumference. I'll tell you this, but oddly enough, the latitude and longitude of the pyramid comes out to be exactly the speed of light. Something impossible to have known for such an ancient civilization. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries and announcements? And how do you think the ancient Egyptians constructed the pyramids?